Hey everybody, how you doing? Welcome to the Fire Time podcast live from Chimney Expo. I'm here with Jerry and Sheryl. How you guys doing?
Hey man, we are doing great, and it's so good to see you up early on East Coast time, Tim. That had to be heck for you this morning.
Well, I don't know if it was worse for me or for Sheryl. You said that we're lucky to have you, right, this early?
No, I'm a morning person. You're lucky to have Jerry.
Yeah. No, I got a text from Jerry at about 5:15 Eastern, and it said, "Welcome to East Coast time." And I thought, yeah, this is about 2:15 a.m. my time, but that's okay. For anyone that is coming to this live, we're broadcasting from the Valley Forge Casino, and we're in the Haverford Room, which is actually just right down the way from the Valley Tavern. So right as you walk into the Stardust Hotel lobby, you can walk past the Valley Tavern right to us. As we jump in, guys, I'm excited. First off, I've actually never been to the Chimney Expo before, and so I feel like I've just kind of dipped my toe in the water into the chimney side of the fireplace industry, where most of my career has truly been on just like appliance sales and retail and everything included there. And it's been really cool to experience this other side, but this is kind of where you guys have come from, right?
Well, I started out as a chimney sweep, Tim, and then went into retail very quickly. Within about 6 months after I went into the chimney service business, I bought my first retail store, and we set up from there. But I know when I first met you a couple of years ago, and I don't think you realized the potent power that was on the service side of this industry, including the appliance sales. I think that has blown your mind what you've learned about this since we've known each other.
Oh, no, it definitely has. Yeah. And I think that I'm definitely seeing the different sides of it. It's kind of like two sides of a coin. I think there's some things that the hearth retailers have figured out that the chimney companies are kind of just coming on to, and vice versa. There's a lot that the chimney companies have figured out that hearth retailers are ages and ages behind on. We think about in-home sales and managing a process. So, Jerry, as much as I want to talk to you, we have your better half right next to you. And I mean that, Sheryl.
I do.
Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So,
Glad to be here.
yeah, as it's funny, I actually wanted to connect with both of you guys as when this podcast goes live, we're gonna be in the middle of our season going through different phases of running a business. And I wanted to have you guys on towards the tail end to talk about legacy makers, people that have been in the industry for a long time, serving it, that are truly leaving a legacy behind that will be, remembered for generations. And I when I think about the two of you, you guys are such a power team. And I truly don't know anyone in the industry that puts out more content than the two of you. I don't. I mean, it is amazing what you guys do. And Sheryl, could you talk just a little bit about your background? Because I mean, you do so much for the industry between manufacturing and working with businesses and just your insights and training that you've had.
Well, basically, I started in construction at 6 years old. My dad had me laying brick then, so we moved into that fairly easy. And then, I mean, if you want the whole background,
yeah,
I ended up opening a wallpaper service that I ran for 22 years. And during that time, I drove a tractor trailer for 230,000 miles. Then I met Jerry. I guess the next was the limo service.
The limo service?
Yeah. I took him out on Saturday for his birthday, bought a limo on Monday, and had a limo service on Tuesday.
Wow.
So I don't do anything really slow. I made some really good decisions. I've been lucky as fast as I make them not to fall on my head a lot.
Okay.
But then once got out of everything else, started working in Jerry's retail business. And then we took the retail business into the manufacturing also, because I had a background in construction and he has the background in Gab.
Yeah.
And we moved into what was at that time Islands by Design.
Okay.
And then in 2010, I bought IBD out completely.
Wow.
So I still have my manufacturing business, but I don't spend as much time in it. I have 2 children there. They're running the business. And basically I run about 90% of my time in Jerry's business.
Yeah.
I'm a Ziegler certified coach and trainer, and I do it under his umbrella. I'm a disc assessor. I've gone as far into that, and that's pretty much where Cheryl comes from.
Yeah, I love that. And Cheryl, I'm gonna have you pull your mic just a little bit forward since we're gonna be at this angle as we
Okay.
talk. Yeah, that's perfect. So, you know, as we jump into this, there's a couple questions that people have asked that I want to get to here. But both of you guys have seen a lot of economic ups and downs. You know, for me in the industry, I really got started, you know, around 2005 or so. And so I was in it in 2008, but I was not plugged in any, you know, capacity thinking it'd be my career. My eyes weren't open really to what was going on. Can you guys talk about what you've seen in, you know, the ups and downs of the economy? Because I feel like, you know, whether we're in a recession or going into a recession, that's for other people besides us to determine. But we know that the ride we've been on for the last 7 years is not, it's just not going to continue. And we are starting to see things tighten a little bit. And I'd love to hear just from you guys historically about what you've seen and been through with the ups and downs.
Well, I started the wallpapering in 1974, I guess. And so notoriously, you're going to watch the economy go up 8 and down 8.
Yeah.
That's not a perfect number, but that's the way it is. Sometimes it goes up slow and down slow. Sometimes it's the other way around. And so I've seen it come down slow. I've also seen the bottom drop out of it. And that was like in 2008 when it just went to, excuse my French, hell in a handbasket. Sure. So we've ridden it, you ride it up and down. This is not new to anybody. The thing that makes it more prevalent in my book is the fact that the internet's out there now. More people see it, more people touch it.
Yeah.
A lot of the rural parts of the country didn't feel the recessions as bad as the cities or the hierarchy. We were able to ride it through, but this time you're following the internet, and then we threw COVID in. So it's been definitely a different year. And I know Jerry's got his take on that also.
Okay. So, well, Tim, when you talk about economic downturns, I have been through several in my life, okay? And they have been during times that I have owned a business in the hearth and the chimney service business, because I was in both, as I had a chimney service business and a retail store. And I don't know if you remember, I asked you before we started when you graduated high school. So one of those economic downturns was when you were just a child, and that was in the 80s, in a period that was called Reaganomics, okay? We had went from more Democratic control into a Republican with Ronald Reagan. And we were in a heap of trouble. And during the 80s, interest rates, mortgage loans, and all that rose dramatically. It was up in the 17% rate for people. And I know people that have mortgages at 15%, 16% from that period of time. And what we saw at that time was a tremendous downturn in the economy. And like Cheryl said, one of the things was news didn't travel today.
Sure.
Today, if somebody gets shot within instance, it's all over the place. We see it, social media, Twitter, everything else. We survived that period. And one of the things I set in my mind was we just weren't going to participate. Okay. We weren't going to participate in the recession. I think that's what people have to start out with, is a decision that you're not going to participate into it.
Yeah.
But then we went to another period. Okay, like I said, if you study history, economics goes up, it goes down. I recently read a book, which was the history of companies in the United States, and watched and where you could see different companies come up, then they go down. If we look at it, we even see it today. We're Circuit City. Best Buy is going away. You look at the total change. But then we came to 07, 08, 09 during that period. And that was a severe one because we had the big 7 bank crack, okay? The big 7. And that was the master banks. That was the Wall Street banks. And we watched a mortgage crisis go on in this country. Now, during this period of time, if you've ever read my book, Chaos to Reinvention, that's when we got debilitated. I mean, that recession put me out of business. When Cheryl just talked to you about, she had bought IBD. Well, that was during that period of time because my life fell completely apart. That's when everything changed for us.
Mhm.
But we're seeing the same indications out here right now. When you see the interest rates rising, we're seeing inflation coming in. And as we look at today, in fact, we got a couple people in the audience. They're from the Northeast. We're not seeing the downturn yet in the Northeast. It is coming. We're seeing the downturn starting in the mid-Atlantic states going south. I was talking to one of my clients who has a very large retail operation, and they have seen a tremendous downturn in the last 60 days, which we've heard it from across the country. Consumers are now looking at their expenditures much harder. And they're getting scared because we read the news, and the news affects us. In fact, sometimes I kid with one of our colleagues, who's Brandy Biswell, because Brandy has a ring like Cheryl does that tells you all things about it. And I said, well, how do you read this thing? She said, well, I read it on my phone, and that affects her. It does tremendously when she sees this news about herself. But this is where you got to take a hard look. But again, you got to make a decision. You're not going to participate in this crap. You're just not going to participate.
Yeah. I think that's so good. In my journey, I got the chance to start managing my own fireplace store back around 2011 or so. And so things were, coming out of the downturn at that point. But for me, the store I inherited, basically it was a really nasty building in a dirty parking lot that had, no business name, no foot traffic. And it just was not like a good part of town. The deck was stacked against us. It felt like a recession because in a given week, we might have 3 people walking the entire week. And so the question kind of became, when we don't have foot traffic, when we don't have a marketing budget, how do we do business? And that's where I really want to spend the lion's share of our time. And I'd love to chat with you guys too about what you guys are seeing and thinking about, because for us, what it kind of came down to was being intentional with every single customer. And I guess to kind of kick it off, I'd love to talk about the idea of having a sales process. My friend Tim Rethlake has been traveling around the country speaking at different HPBA events this year. And I was with him in Austin, Texas a couple of weeks ago. And he asked the crowd, he said, hey, I have a question, for those of you that are here. How many of you have a sales process documented where you could talk to one of your new hires and on paper, you could say, here's the steps to make a sale, whether it's 3 steps, 5 steps, 10 steps, and not one business could raise their hand. And Tim said, this is the 4th event I've done this year, and no one's been able to raise their hand. And then he said, how many of you guys have a training program when someone comes into your business, and just talking specifically for salespeople, where you line out their first month or their first 6 weeks with the company day by day by day, so you know how to train somebody? And nobody raised their hand. And he said, this is again the 4th event. And that's mostly hearth retailers. That's not as heavy on the chimney side. But he's talking to hearth retailers saying like, well, man, you're worried about the down economy, but you don't have a sales process. So like, that's not going to help you. When things dry up, you got to fall back onto your process that gives you results. I guess I'd love to tee with you guys up to talk about whether it's on the training and onboarding side or whether it's on the sales process side. Why is that so important? And what does it look like?
Okay. So you want me to go first?
I guess you're going first.
So okay. So Tim, I want you to hold your hand out in front of the camera. Just hold it out like that.
Okay.
Now put your fingers together. Now split them apart. Okay. As they're split apart right now, just that is your business. So this is the money that is sliding through. Just imagine you're holding a handful of sand right now, and it's coming out of your hand. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
So when you talk about this a while ago, it is all of the above. One of the things that we have promoted for years, I became a student of Michael Gerber back in the 90s. I was able to have breakfast with him and I learned the value of what systems are. In fact, I wrote a book about it called Standardizing Standard Operating Procedures. We're also network a lot with Al Levy, who is a leading expert in writing manuals, SOPs. He calls them manuals. I call them SOPs. But yeah, you got to have the training, you got to have the onboarding, and you got to have the systems to put it together. But there's an additional challenge today day that's coming up that's kicking our butts, and that is the short-term career of your workers.
Yeah.
And I just did a article for Sweeping Magazine, and it was all about how long the career is. In the service sector of America at this point, the average career is 1.9 years. 1.9 years. If we look at people in the 25 to 34-year-old age bracket, overall, it is 2.8 years. Now, the amazing thing is last year, that was 2.7 in the service sector, and it's now dropped to 1.9. And as we look, this is where I got a little problem with the way the leadership of our country is. Because how often do you hear we created more jobs?
Mhm.
We created 535,000 new jobs last month. And what is it doing to create the people to fill these jobs?
Yeah.
And when you look at it, I can guarantee you everyone that's sitting in front of us right now, hiring people and retaining them is one of the most hugest challenges that we have out here today. So you got to have these systems. And when people don't have it, I'll give you an example. We're from the South, okay? And when I was in the retail business, the biggest product that people walked into our store for was a vent-free gas log. Now, you're from the West Coast. You probably didn't see it like we did.
Yeah.
North and South Carolina is the capital of vent-free appliances in America. There's more sold in those two states and in Florida than anywhere else in the country. So the customer came in and they would, how can we help you? They go through the normal, we just put our pitch in. I'm here to look at some gas logs. Really? So what do you know? And they wanted vent-free gas logs. This was utmost. This was right at the top of their minds. So we wrote a system up, and the system told our salespeople how to take the vent-free shopper to turn them into a direct vent. Now, what was even more shocking about this was no one even knew what a direct vent was in these days.
Sure.
Okay. Now, again, this is much prior to you, because I can remember when direct vent rolled out in this industry, and it was predicted to be a big failure. Nobody's going to ever buy a fireplace with a pipe sticking out the side wall of a house. This ain't natural. Well, the Shibnicks proved that wrong. Okay. And then Travis and everybody got into direct vent. But being able to write this system down. In fact, I had two chimney sweeps one time, and they wanted to put my people to the test.
Yeah.
And they walked in and pretended to be secret shoppers and came in. And after they got done with it, they said, "Is Jerry here?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, we're old friends. I just want to see him." And they came back in my office and told me, said, "We just put your people through the test." And they did exactly what you said. They turned us into a direct vent insert buyer.
Yep.
And Tim, this resulted in massive amounts of direct vent inserts that nobody else was selling. So we were separating ourselves.
Makes a ton of sense. And I think it just goes back to like, there's got to be a way to move from A to Z. And that's what I've seen. I secret shopped 6 retailers on the East Coast about a month ago or so when we were together, John. And truly, no one had a process to move me along. No company. And these are not slouch businesses, but no one had a process to take me from A to Z. Sheryl, can you talk about a sales process?
Well, before I get to that, let's just, the thing is, we take these people that we hire, and I do a lot of hiring for a lot of companies, and we throw them in without the knowledge.
Yes.
And we assume because they're human, they're going to be able to sell. We don't tell them how to do it. We don't tell them when to step it up, what to do. I'm not an upsell kind of person.
Yep.
I'm a person that I like to sell what I believe in.
Yep.
And I think, number one, that's the biggest fault in the sales process. You don't get your salesman believing in what they're selling.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, and then you can lead them down the path.
Yep.
And this path needs to be written, because like steps, you can see them. And I think every process needs to be written in a form that anyone can read.
Yeah.
We tend to write like we talk. Jerry does that a lot. And that's great, except when you're talking to somebody that doesn't hear like you speak.
Yeah.
They're not going to read like you wrote.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think it needs to be a simple process.
Yeah.
The simpler, the better. If you're going to do a sales process, if you write it Give it to one of these guys to see
Yeah.
if they can follow it, see if it makes sense to them.
Yeah, and for those of you who are listening and here in the room, I mean, there's honestly there's a 7-step sales process that like I always teach. It's what we use in our retail stores, and for us, it works really, really well both for in-home sales and for the showroom. And the process is really simple. Step 1, greet the customer, and there's intentionality behind that. What do we do to greet the customer, make that connection, build trust? That's step 1, though. Step 2, understand their problem. And that's different than interview. That's different than discovery. The language is really specific. Understand their problem. The only reason they're having a sweep out to their house is because they have a problem. And they look at you or me like a plumber coming out, right? It's great if we're a nice guy. Like, that's great. But they're not out here to make a new friend. They're out here because they got a problem. And when we jump straight into doing the work or even straight into diagnosing without understanding their problem, we set ourselves up for failure and missed expectations. So that's step 2, is we have to understand the customer's problem. Step 3, we devise a solution. And again, that language is intentional. I'm with you, Sheryl. I'm not about the upsell unless it helps solve my customer's problem. If it solves their problem, I will push hard for that. But I don't care about the upsell to, make an extra $400 on the service. All that doesn't matter to me. But if we're advising a solution, that's based on our understanding of the problem. So it means as we talk about the solution, we can only talk about things that were relevant to their problem. If I'm talking about random bits of information out of the NFPA 211 code that has no relevance to their problem, it doesn't matter. We're just filling up their head with noise. Yeah, go for it.
I don't call that an upsell. I call that a knowledge sale.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, you're not selling it to make the profit. You're selling it for purpose.
100%. Yeah, I'm with you. So that's step 3. So again, step 1, customer. Step 2, understand their problem. Step 3, advise a solution. And then step 4, explain the process. People haven't done this kind of work before, whether they're buying a gas insert or getting a chimney repair done. There's confusion as to what to do. So you break it down into a 3 or 4 step process. Hey, here's the way the job is going to work. Step 1, we do this. Step 2, we do this. Step 3, we do this. And then your problem's solved. And the reason we do it then is that momentum's high. At this point, we understand their problem. We've advised a solution. They're pumped on it. While momentum's high, let's talk about the process of what needs to happen. So that takes you to step 5, call to action. Now, call to action is not necessarily asking for the money. It's asking for step 1 of the process. So we just explained the 3-step process. We call to action on step 1, and then we call to action on step 2, and then step 3, or then step 4. You don't do any more than 4 steps. Then step 6 in our sales process is if the customer says no, we pursue the opportunity. And I want to dig into this for the rest of the conversation. We intentionally use follow-up to pursue our book of business and move them down the pipeline to the point where they either buy or they don't buy. If they don't buy, it's fine. For now, we live in a free country, and so that's fine. If they say no, check them off the list, right? And then finally, step 7, after they purchased, we show gratitude. And so those are 7 simple steps, and none of those rocket science. Greet the customer, understand their problem, advise a solution, explain the process, call to action, pursue the opportunity, and show gratitude. Now, that's a sales process, but there's a million of them, right? Like, you could take a 3-step sales process. Hey, first, step 1, we're going to interview the customer to understand what they need. Step 2, we're going to show them 3 solutions that will solve their problem. And then step 3, we're going to ask them to get started. Perfect. Like, that's great. But it's about having a process you can teach. Go for it, Jerry.
Okay. So, Tim, couple things. Number 1, Dave Levitt just made an excellent comment. Sometimes it's tough to decide when to start talking codes to customers. Dave, listen carefully. Number 1 problem, chimney service industry. We try to beat the customer up with a code book. Come here, let me slap you upside the head with this NFPA 211 and this IRC till I beat you into submission and you buy. Okay? You don't talk codes. I don't care. I'm a consumer. Do I really care? I mean, there's an old saying, I'm 21, I'm free. It's my house. I can do what I want to. Now, in your process, as you were going through this, you have to understand, why does the customer buy? 70% of people are going to buy to eradicate a pain in their life. 30% are going to buy to gain a desire, such as I want a new fireplace facade. I want it for looks. I want it to decorate my home. Think of it like a kitchen today. And many times in fact, Steve Hall, who used to own Fireside Distributors in Raleigh, North Carolina, said he didn't understand that people would buy outdoor living at the price they would till he got his kitchen remodeled and got this quote of $60,000 to remodel his kitchen.
Yeah.
And the kitchen, when you look at the fireplace is a most watched area of the home. In today's world, we put our televisions above it.
Yeah.
But in your process, there's one thing to add to all that you said there. And I honestly believe that in order to do this, we have to understand two things. We have to understand our own behavior patterns, and we have to understand the behavior patterns of our customers, such as I'm a high D person. Now, would you believe that?
I wouldn't believe
You
that,
wouldn't
Jerry.
believe
I
that,
can't believe
okay?
that.
So luckily, I live with a disc assessor. So I'm a person, I want it in bullet points. If you come in and give me a 30-minute dissertation over codes, guess what? You lost me back at the 5-minute part, okay? I don't care. I want to know what's in it for me.
Yeah.
Why do I want to do this? Now, in my world, can you imagine I would be a difficult customer to work with?
I think that if I could solve your problem and move quickly, you'd be
Exactly
great.
right. Such as when an HVAC contractor comes to my house, I'm looking at them from what I do of a technician, just like the guys are in here of what their technicians would do. They're coming to a home, and I need something done. They can't price it. They got my attention.
I'm so glad you
right
brought this
now.
up. We are going down this rabbit hole in a second.
And what we did, it's like I recently had in our pool house, the HVAC system went out. Okay, so here it is. Come out, check it out. And they said, well, the owner will be in touch with you next week with the price on the new systems. Like,
nope.
What
you
in the
lose.
world?
You lose.
Yeah,
you
lose.
lose.
See, and it's also being able to quote. Just this week, we have some trees we need trimmed. Okay, so I found a guy, came out, give me a quote on my trees. Number one issue, took him 3 weeks to get the quote. Okay. And my belief is if it takes you 3 weeks to give me the quote, how long is it going to take you to come to me to answer a problem? Okay. Am I going to wait 3 weeks for that? No. So now I got this quote, and it was way higher than we anticipated.
Way out of line. It was almost like he took 3 weeks to make that.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like, I can't, I don't know what all's involved here. Why this is so high to trim a couple limbs out of some trees. Okay.
And part of it's because they didn't tell us what we just got through seeing. Explain to the people why it is. I mean, if they'd have told me I've got to bring a boom lift in here and do all this, maybe I would have, maybe not, but maybe I'd have looked at it better.
On the quote, it even said, we're going to need to drive through your yard. But what it didn't say was, if there's any damage, we will correct the damage. So what am I going to do here? Now I got this truck coming in. You're going to bury it up in the yard. Now I'm going to have to fix the ruts in my yard. And I ain't got time for that. Okay. I want somebody to come in and do it. So you got to understand the customer. And that's why I think that everybody needs to take a behavior assessment quiz of their sales. This helped me tremendously whenever she started doing disc assessments. And we see this, and people don't understand how this is. In fact, she'll be doing a disc debriefing with someone. It'll be a husband-wife team. And the husband is saying, well, that's not me. And the wife said, oh, yes, that is exactly you.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly you.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to understand yourself. And you got to understand, such as I do a lot of public speaking. You remember the first time you saw me speak?
I do.
Okay.
It was memorable.
And you were right after me. Remember that?
Yeah.
And what did you think after that?
I thought, how am I going to get on the stage after this guy?
Right. And the reason being because I use so much energy. Would you agree that I was energetic on that stage?
I was telling Matt about this yesterday. I said, Jerry's powerful. Like you are a 11 out of 10 when you speak in front of a crowd.
That's it. But the other side of that is I am physically exhausted. I mean, I am wiped out because I'm doing a couple things. I'm on stage. I have a mission, and the mission is to get someone to pick up and utilize what I'm saying. But what you're also doing, which is a really hard thing for me, you're also controlling yourself. You got to watch every word. Today we live in the United States of the offended. Robert Rayford, the local disc jockey, coined that term some years ago. And all it's going to take is one word, one phrase uttered in the wrong way, one strange look, and you're going to lose the customer. You're going to lose them. And you've got to remember that. You've got to develop. And when I went through Gittimer sales coach training, the key things that get them are taught was you got to build trust.
Yep.
You got to build a relationship. And what I phrase it as when I'm doing sales training is you've got to let the customer know that you love and care about them.
Oh, yeah.
You really do. And you look at it, and that's where you've got to really analyze your processes today. And you said the thing a while ago, if you don't have a process, then everybody that works for you is going to have a different process.
Yep. And there's no way to get better. There's no process we can't get better.
Can you imagine when you go in a Subway, do you know how the bread's going to be sliced?
Oh, I do.
You know exactly how they're going to put it on there. You know they're going to have the salt and pepper and a combined shaker that's going to be putting it on there. You know you're going to get 3 napkins. You're going to get all these things. When you look at it, what's the secret of McDonald's? If you look back in history, the secret of McDonald's was the speedy food system. That's what they invented at McDonald's. Hamburger delivered to the customer 30 seconds or less. Now, how long does it take you to get that burger? Pull ahead, we'll bring it out in the parking lot.
Yeah. Well, I want to rein this back in, and I want to address some of the questions that we've had, and also just open it up to you guys as well. You know, I think that like the sales process is it's so important to have, because if you're reinventing the wheel with every customer, no one can get better. We can't train to anything. And if by some miracle we do have a new technician or, salesperson that comes to work for us and we don't have a process to train them to, of course we can't keep them, right? Because they can't succeed. So here's a question that was submitted, and this is, you submitted this one. So let's tackle this first. You talked about the best way to initiate change with a seasoned crew. And I want to pose that to Sheryl first. So how would you tackle that if you know that things are changing and your crew has experience and it's tough to change behavior? How would you do that?
Well, basically, transparency is my first level. Don't go in and try to brush it over. Be very transparent, but lay out what you're doing. But the main thing, tell them why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because the generations look beyond us, that's what they're needing. They need the why.
Yep.
Why are we doing this? Not just we are. And I think that's where people make their pitfalls. They go in, they change, and it's like, we're going to change this next week. And if you're a seasoned employee, you're not good with that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we came up having to go through change. Now change is put on us on a daily basis. But I believe just the transparency, the explanations, and be honest with them. Tell them that you don't know if this is going to work.
Yeah.
I think that's rarely high, because we always go in and say, this is going to make us better.
Yep.
And it doesn't always do that. And then if you do that once, the next time's worse on you, and the next time's worse. Go in with, we're going to try this to see if it works in our company.
I love that humility. Me and Matt have talked about that a lot at Wi-Fi. As you know, we're a small company. We're working on just different initiatives and things to help our partners. And there's been a lot of conversations around that about like, this is what we have to do. This is why, and we don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try to. Yeah. I think the why really is the big deal. I mean, and it, for me, I'm a millennial, and I don't know, you're laughing at me already. I'm a millennial though. And understanding why, it's really hard for me to fall in line with something if I don't understand why it's happening. But I think that while that is very true of younger people, I think that there also just been a change in society where, we're seeing the industrial revolution come to an end. And, the idea of going in to work at a factory for 30 years, getting an amazing retirement pension when you're done, like that's just not a thing anymore. And we are seeing people change jobs quicker. And there's much more, I should say, there's less of an expectation that I can count on my employer or the government or whoever to take care of me. And because of that, because we don't have as much inherent trust in the systems and organizations around us, we have to know why, right? Because, I've only been here for 2 years. Can I really trust my company to just know what's right? And I think that idea of explaining why, I think that's really important. Sheryl, Jerry, you got a comment?
Yeah. Tim, one of the things I do is we do a lot of SWAT meetings. Like I said, I've got one next week. We did 3 this past week. And this is what we find out as we go into this. this is going over the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of the companies, and also the personal fears of the people. And a leading thing keeps coming everywhere we go, which is we label it as communication. And the communication is where the people that are in the company really don't understand what the company vision or the mission is. And we try to make changes. Now, one of our coaches is a gentleman by the name of Randy Pennington. Studied under Randy for 3 years, worked with him. And Randy is a change agent. He works with Fortune 500 companies. And what I learned from Randy is that if you're going to affect change within your people have to be involved in the change. They have to understand. Going back, the distrust that you're talking about, I'm a big student of history. So if you go back, when did people stop trusting the government, Tim? Do you know?
I don't know, 1980s?
No, it was in the 1960s. And the reason the distrust started at that time was because of the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War all of a sudden was reporting live from Vietnam, and the stories that we were being told as the public was not true. So this was when, in the 50s, people trusted the government. They trusted Dwight Eisenhower. They trusted him. He was a general. He had led them through the war. But as we got into the 60s, we also went through a period where we had massive, we had assassinations of world leaders. We had John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King. And all of a sudden, the trust factor started going down. But in response to you, as a millennial, and actually you don't act as millennial, so you are not, you are not the classic millennial. Okay, I've had too much contact with you. I would classify you as a millennial with baby boomer opinions. And I really, really mean that when I say that. Okay. And there's other people that I've got as clients that it's hard to believe they're in the millennial age group. But when you look at it, when in the 60s and the 70s, if you told an employee to jump, his question was, how high?
How high? Yeah, that's right.
But today, what's going to happen is the millennial mind says, well, why am I jumping? So it goes down again, just like you've got to understand your people. I developed a point of view when I was speaking, when I went through speak training, which is, and a point of view is where you speak from everything. And mine is about the pain of change. And here's what it is. Change is painful. It's up to each of us to decide if we want to go through the pain of change or continue in the pain that we're in. Okay. And that's what this is. But if you're going to affect change, Jonathan, in your company, everybody's got to be bought into it. And that's what happens. And if they're not bought in, you're just opening up an explosion or implosion in the company. I'm seeing it happen to leading companies in this country. Their employees don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand why they're going there.
One of the things that I think about with that, I'm pointing at Matt right here in the room, is as me and Matt work together. So I totally agree with you on vision, mission, core values. And that was a big thing for us, putting that together for our business. So one of the things that we have built in as a practice is we take a half day every quarter to review our mission, our vision, our core values, and just talk about why are we doing this? Where are we living into these core values? And in particular, we have our goals and objectives for about the next 4 years written out quarter by quarter. And so every quarter we review the last quarter, and there's probably, I'd say there's 4 to 10 small things per quarter that we're trying to do. These are not big tasks, but they're small things that they're small objectives that lead to our big goals. We have 5 big goals as a company. And what we do at the end of the quarter is we just review, hey, why are we here? Where do we live into our core values this last quarter? Where do we fall short of them? And then as we keep talking about it, we'll say, okay, here's the 7-8 things last quarter that we were going to set out to do. Did we do them? And we look at them and then we decide, well, if we didn't do this, do we let it burn and we forget about it? Or do we need to move this up into this quarter? Okay, if we move it into this quarter, does that mean we need to take something from this quarter and move it, and we're looking proactively. And that rhythm has really been awesome to help keep us on the same page. But I think that it's a combination of understanding why, but then also meeting regularly around it to calibrate. I think that's the biggest thing, is that for so many people, when they're not invested into with regular meetings, I think it's really hard to stay aligned. And we got to keep moving because there's more questions I want to get to. This comes in from our friend Richard in Kansas. And Richard said, how effective is flat rate menu pricing in this down economy? He has a part 2 that I'm going to ask, but I'll ask this to you, Jerry. How effective is flat rate menu pricing?
Okay. Well, first thing is Richard's in Oklahoma.
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 Oh, nice.
Okay.
I was thinking of Bart, not a
Correct.
not-
You
Sorry,
were thinking
Richard.
of Bart. Okay. So Richard is a client of mine. In fact, I did a SWAT last week. So Richard comes out of the HVAC industry.
Okay.
Flat rate pricing was developed in the plumbing industry many years ago by a guy by the name of Frank Bloom. Okay. And what it was where plumbers started giving flat pricing on what they were doing. So this has become very paramount in many of the service industries, in HVAC, plumbing, garage doors. And you look at this, flat rate pricing is very, very predominant. And Richard has developed a system that is, the best I can tell you, it is slap remarkable, because in his flat rate pricing, if his techs are there, then he gives you 5 options. Now, the only thing I really don't like 5 options, but that's Richard's choice of
Sure.
what he produces.
Yeah.
I think 3 options are the right number. Okay. 3 options to me. But by giving this, instead of getting it broke down, I'm getting the flat price, because I used to tell customers when come in, they'd say, how much is that gas log? I said, well, really what you're wanting to know is how much you're going to spend when you're completely dead and done.
Yep.
So let's talk generalities. Okay. And let's say we sold vent free, we sold vented, we sold direct vent. And what we would give them was a budget range pricing to put the vent free log in, put the vented log in, and the direct vent gas insert in. So we would give them, so flat rate pricing, it worked excellent. We had flat rate pricing in our retail store. If you came in, you needed a freestanding stove with floor protection and a Class A chimney system and double wall stovepipe, we had it ready to go. Here it is, boom, 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 when we were showing it. And we could give people, okay, the stove's $2,000, and I'm just going to talk general terms, and that installation, that's a $1,500 installation, so you're needing a $3,500 budget without going back over here and having a seat and while somebody's doing the quote.
Yeah.
So flat rate pricing, does it take a while to put it through? Yes. But as you've seen, Richard has developed up a fantastic system that works.
Yep.
It gives us the price right now. You need to know what this new heating system is. Okay, that's a $6,500 heat pump in there.
Yeah. Cheryl, what's your take on flat rate pricing?
I like it because it gives me the bottom number really fast.
Yep.
The thing is, Richard's question was in a down economy.
Yeah.
I think in a down economy, it's even more effective than when we're going up, because it gives that person a lower choice if they have to choose it then, with a chance of an upgrade in the future. So I think in a down economy, I had rather know right now as opposed to get into it and then be choked with the number.
Yeah, I love that. And I kind of want to go down this rabbit hole here for a minute, because Jerry, you talked about the people that came to your house for the quote on your trees that couldn't provide something on site. And this is one thing that I found is that many chimney companies in particular, when they get out to the house, they are not able to turn around the estimate right then. And I mean, I'm serious. If you don't turn the estimate around in the home and you leave, even if you send it 24 hours later, you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars of business a year. It's got to be turned around in the home. And that means the appointment may have to be longer. It means that you probably have to go out to your truck for 15, 20 minutes to work on it and come back. You got to build that expectation in. But when we think about this, like, the reason I think this is such a good question, and the answer is absolutely yes, flat rate pricing is what every company has to go to. But in today's world, we have seen busyness and speed increase like crazy. And I can jump on Amazon and get the price of anything that I want to know, right? If I'm going to buy a car, I can figure out what the price of the car is going to be instantaneously. And I, as a consumer, expect the exact same thing for my service or retail companies that I'm talking with. And so if you think about this, if someone calls your chimney business and says, hey, can you come out? You know, how long does it take? A week, 2 weeks? Take some time to get somebody out to the house. So they've already waited a week to a week and a half, which is unheard of. Does Amazon make you wait a week and a half? No. So you wait a week and a half. You come out to the house, measure everything up. You look around. Well, hey, you know, here's the repair. This is what code says. Here's the problem. We're going to help you with it. And, well, I'll send that bid to you in a couple days. You're the consumer thinking, are you kidding me? Like, I've waited a week and a half. I've taken 2 hours off of work, and you can't give me the price? So what do? Well, their momentum is high, but since you can't deliver, now they're going to start shopping you because they've got all the information they've heard from you at that visit, but you have not delivered on being the pro. being the pro means you turn that quote around in the home. And that's a big thing with like me and Matt. We've talked about this with Wi-Fi. Is like our goal is that Wi-Fi allows you to quote any fireplace totally custom on site in seconds, because providing that in the home is such a big deal. Now, I want to go back one step even further to what you said, Jerry, is this. It's providing that initial estimate. So now this is true for hearth retailers. I was just kind of picking on chimney guys in the house. For hearth retailers, where they get it wrong is someone will call their business or they'll walk into a hearth store. And hearth retailers in general don't write up a preliminary estimate, which is insanity. They'll talk about the products and they'll say, oh yeah, well, these can cost this much. It really just kind of depends though. We got to come out and measure it up. So we got to come look at the job. And so again, a customer schedules that appointment and the hearth retailer is out a week and a half. So the customer is waiting. They still don't really know what it's going to be because nothing's been documented. It doesn't matter what's been said. Nothing's been documented. So they get out to the house, they take a look at it. And let's say a hearth retailer can turn that bid around. Well, the customer hasn't had much time to think about it. And so they can't really make a decision on this. Now, if we can give an initial estimate range, though, that can change. So like when someone calls your chimney company and says, hey, here's what I've got, to be able to say, here's a range of what most people spend on a project like this. I'll send you a preliminary range of our projects. We can schedule you. If the customer's willing to look at that price range and schedule the appointment, they're giving you permission to sell them something that expensive. And we've seen this with retailers that if as a retailer, someone goes into a store and you can give them a price tag of $7,000 to $8,500 and say, we're going to come out and take a look at it. Here's the average install price for a job like this. When the customer has waited a week and a half staring at that price, all of a sudden when you come out to the house and you're right in the pocket, they're going to buy because they'll cancel the appointment if you're too expensive. And I think in a down economy, flat rate pricing is necessary. I used to work for a company where our service rate was, I don't remember the exact numbers, but basically our service rate was $60 an hour. This is for one technician, $60 an hour, billed out in 15-minute increments, minimum of 45 minutes. And it's like, how confusing is that for the customer? Well, so wait, how long does it take to change a thermocouple? Well, the parts in the thermocouple, it could be $80, it could be $250, depending on the manufacturer. And usually it takes an hour and a half. So, at $60 an hour, that would be $90 plus your thermocouple. And the customer's sitting there thinking, what does this cost? Whereas when my fuel pump goes out in my car and I take it to the Toyota dealer, they say it's $450. And I can decide, do I have the budget or do I not? It's not, well, the fuel pump is, $179. And if we have our lead mechanic do it, well, that rate is $200 an hour. And if we have our assistant do it, it's $150 an hour. And it usually takes 45 minutes, but it might take an hour. But you might say, like, the uncertainty in this world, uncertainty is the end. And flat rate pricing creates certainty. And the best thing is if you scare them away with a high price, you got a flat rate for a different one. So I'm with you, Sheryl. Like when I say I'm not about the upsell, like I'll work with a customer's budget. Now I'll push their budget if I think it's going to solve their problem, but I'll work with their budget. So you give them the flat rate and you ask them, how's this look? And they'll tell you. So I don't mean to just, rant on that, but I think not giving an initial estimate up front before you've ever been out there. I think that's foolish because it's like the bouncer at the club. But instead of saying you got to be 21 or older to get into the club, it's saying you got to be willing to spend $8 to $10 for us to come out to the house. Now, you got to nuance that and be delicate with it. But that initial estimate will save so much time and focus the customer's momentum. But number two, when you're at that house, you have to turn around a final quote before you leave. You have to.
Okay. So Dave Levitt has just asked a question here, and if you want to put it up, and I want to address that in a minute. But what you're talking about is budget range quoting. Budget range. And one of the problems with the chimney service industry is we deal with a lot of large restoration jobs. Okay. Like he's in Boston. He's in the New York market. And what you're talking about, and I don't know if you know this or not, but we have chimney restoration jobs that can run $20, $30, $40, $50,000. I've seen them up to $100,000. And actually it just blows my mind because when I look how much I paid for my first house, I'm like, my God, that's what we're putting into chimneys today. But what are consumers looking for? And this is what I'm looking for. Just tell me where we're at. Are we $5,000? Are we $2,500? Are we $1,000? And then you can zero it down. But Dave has asked, I understand the importance of writing up an estimate on the spot. But if your estimate is 10K to 30K, how many customers are going to agree to go with you on the spot? Dave, dead on the money. Some will. And this is number one where we track the closing percentages. And what we see as we track it, guess what? Joe's closing 30%, but John's only closing 5%. So what's the problem here? The problem is this guy's got to learn what this guy's doing. And it goes back to trust, the relationship. And that's one of the reasons why one of our processes we suggest is that you do quality control by virtual means. In other words, I'm showing you these photos. I'm telling you about it. But before I've done that, I've asked you the critical question. Tim, I'm getting ready to share with you what we found in your chimney, okay? Now, I know Mrs. Tim isn't here right now, so she's probably going to have a lot of questions, or you may have questions later. Is it okay with you if I record what we're getting ready to talk about? And if you ask in that manner, usually they're going to say, okay. Once in a while, you'll have one that may not. It could be a well-known personality that doesn't want to be recorded or anything. And then from that point, what you do with that is listen to what you said. It's amazing if you can hear what you said. Have you ever listened to your own podcast and understand how many times you slip up?
Oh, yeah.
It's
I know all my tells.
Right. It's just like Richard a while ago. You would have caught that later, okay? But I wanted to make sure that Richard knew exactly who was talking about. Okay. But when you look at it from there, you got to learn where are the keywords. If you look, when there's a customer problem, then we'll always go back to something that happened. Somebody did something in the process. And the more you can document the process, the more you can trace it back and fix the problem of what caused this. That makes sense? Yeah, we're dead in agreement. Budget range. If you're going out and you're telling the customer, I'm going to get a quote to you by such and such, the biggest fault that we see in this industry is people don't get their quotes. And they call back, and we hear this in the SWAT meetings because the ladies and guys in the office are taking the phone calls and they're telling the guys. And this is the whole thing. If you tell a customer you're going to get a quote by tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, then by 8:59, that quote needs to be there. If not, you didn't meet your customer promise. And if you don't meet a promise to a customer, you're going to lose the relationship. When you break that, that puts a wall up, and scaling that wall's a real problem.
Yeah. So I think Dave had such a good question. It's the same one before about code. And I just wanted to circle back and make sure we answered that. And Dave, my opinion back to your code question is we bring out code when it solves their problem. When it doesn't solve their problem, we leave it out. That's for us to know, not the customer. This question is so good. So what if the estimate's 10 to 30,000? It's a huge range. I would still say that in the initial interaction before the call is booked, whether it's done on the internet or whether it's done on the phone or in a showroom, I would recommend some kind of an average install range just to focus the customer, momentum. If someone tells me, hey, Tim, I know you're looking at a chimney repair, I'd like to ask you a few questions just to give you an idea of about what these jobs cost. And they could ask me 10, 15 questions. And that should correspond, again, going to flat rate pricing, that should correspond to a flat rate price or a range where you could say, we'll come out and take a look at it. I'd say, many people in your situation, they could spend anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 on a project like this. It could be less, but that's usually what people spend. Now, if I'm the customer and I say, oh gosh, that's a lot. Well, I don't want to book that appointment. Okay, well, we have a process. We can fall back on that or we can just let it go. But if I say, oh man, that's a lot. Okay, well, we need to get it done. When can you guys come out? Now I'm on the hook as the customer. I'm focused. So I still believe in doing it. And the question that Dave had is, how many customers will agree with you on the spot if it's $30,000? And it's a great question. And I'll say I don't know, but it's going to be more. It's going to be 100% more than if you don't do it on the spot, right? So if you don't quote on the spot, no one will go with you. But if you quote on the spot, some people will. In addition to that, though, what it does is it keeps momentum moving. So sales is a game of momentum, and momentum is high when we're out at the house. So if we can give that number there, again, like I got a roof done, this year, and it was expensive. And when people came out, I told them right away, I said, I'm not going to buy today, just so you know. I'm getting 3 bids, and I'm going to weigh it all. I'm not going to go with the cheapest price, but I'm going to get 3 bids, look it all over. So I set the expectation. but they still turned around to bid that day. Now, what you can do when you turn around to bid that day is now you go to step 6 in the sales process, you pursue the opportunity. So if you track your sales process by pipeline stages, right? Stage 1 being an initial estimate, stage 2 being a scheduled appointment, stage 3 being a finalized quote, and then stage 4 being a sale. Well, now I can move that customer in my dashboard of my CRM to stage 3. Okay, the bid's been finalized. Here's the notes from the job. I'm going to call them back in 2 days because they may not be ready on the spot, but I mean, they're probably going to be ready within a week, week and a half on many of these jobs. So I think that it's a great question, Dave. And what I would say is that by turning it around, then you've got a chance, but it keeps momentum high for the customer. And now you plug them into the follow-up process. Sheryl, do you have anything on the follow-up process?
Well, the thing about it, one thing I hear everybody saying that we need to do, we assume that everybody we quote is our customer. Everyone you quote is not your customer.
Right.
And if you're going to lose them with that number, when you get down to the bottom number, you're still going to lose them.
Yes.
Right.
But I think the follow-up's the main thing. But can I inject one word here that we use over and over that will?
It's an appropriate word, right? I don't have to censor this.
I'll let you get by with this one. It's the word budget. As myself, a high D, I dislike the word budget because that means you're going to try to take everything I've got. And that's just my mentality. So I'd rather hear a cost range, a cost something other than I'm trying to meet your budget.
Valid point.
Yeah.
Can I meet your monetary agreement?
Yeah.
The word budget is a kill word for me.
Yeah. Now, Dave's added something else I want to address. Your statement, Dave, is, Tim, I like that, but sounds a little scary. So we don't even get our foot in the door.
Yeah.
And this is going to be part of it. You got to have confidence. You have to speak with confidence. You know, it's like, I'm going to do a presentation later today in this convention. Do you think I'm going to walk in there scared that somebody's not going to accept what I'm getting ready to say? No, that we're going to go in.
Yeah.
We're going to do the show. And if somebody disagrees, hey, that's fine. That's their opinion. But I have the confidence to walk into that. And that's what you have to have. And again, Dave, that's where I suggest that record your conversation with the customer. That's a neat thing about softwares today. You can record the customer's phone calls and listen to what's going on. Does your voice waver? Is there something that says, don't trust me? Is there, and you got to look at yourself when you got to have it, but you have to walk into this with confidence that I'm going to win. You have to get up every morning, especially if we go back to what the intention is of this entire show today, going into the potential down economy. You better come into it with some confidence. If you're going to come in it scared, guess what? You're going to lose.
Yeah.
You're going to lose.
One thing with that, Jerry, and I think, again, this question of Dave's is so insightful, is it is scary. You know, if you tell a customer, you know, yeah, many people spend, you know, $10,000 to $25,000 on something like this, that is scary. And there will be people that hang up the phone or that don't book the call. But the thing to think about with this, just like you said, Sheryl, not everyone's your customer. And this is what I found. Again, this is more on the hearth. Imagine it's on the sweep side as well. Hearth retailers' problem is that they say yes to everything, and they end up with bad jobs that they shouldn't have taken on. And the reason they say yes to everything is they don't write up enough estimates. When you write up 4 times as many estimates, you get to pick the jobs you pursue. And so this has been something that me and Matt have built into Wi-Fi, is like in our CRM dashboard, every opportunity ranked as an A, B, C, or D level job, just like a school grade. And so, you know, when I was managing my retail stores, our rule was if a customer is an A or a B level customer, we want 7 follow-ups with every customer. If they're C or D, never follow up. It's as simple as that, right? And so I think that this idea of it is scary, but it's okay because not every customer is an A level customer. If someone listens to that price range and it goes, I don't think we can afford that, but yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll book the appointment. Well, I mean, that's telling you something about that customer. The last thing I'll say, and Jerry, I'd like to kick it to you, and then I'd like to open it up just for any final questions here. Is I'll tell a story. So about 3 years ago in our retail store, we had a new salesperson start, and he started September 1st. And my whole thing with training new salespeople is that it takes about 5 weeks to train a salesperson. Now, That doesn't mean train them to be able to do everything. That process can take a couple of years. But within 5 weeks, you can have an effective salesperson. But here was the rule for him. He was only allowed to sell a gas insert into a masonry fireplace that already had gas inside of it. That was it, right? I mean, pretty easy, right? I mean, how do you measure for that? Well, can this box fit inside of this box, right? There's already gas inside of it. So there's not a lot to this job. And for him, we found that this brand new team member was selling just about as much as people that had been in the company and in the industry for decades because the focus. What about all the zero clearance fireplace customers? What about gas inserts where there's not, a line already to the fireplace? Well, you're not selling those. Like, you can give it to someone else, but you're not selling those. And the whole thing is that there's way more pie than we think there is. There are so many good jobs out there and good customers out there that we're not even touching because we're going after everything else. So I think going back to your question, Dave, you will lose some, but I think that by building an easy process where you're transparent with the customer to say, yeah, this is about what most people spend. We want to come out to your house because it can be higher and it can be a little bit lower, but here's where most people spend. That fast tracks you and it puts the customer on the hook to be serious. Sheryl, I want to maybe just ask you any thoughts before we open it up for a couple final questions.
Yeah, the main thing is trust. Make that into your company. Be transparent, and just move the sales slowly. You've got to get there fast, but you still
Slow
got to
is
move
fast.
slowly. And so we, as looking at the customer, instead of looking yourself as the salesman, look at how you would feel if you were that person you were looking into their eyes.
Yeah, that's so good. So we just have a couple minutes left, and we're so thankful for those of you that are watching this live, and for you that are here. As we think about an economy is starting to tighten up, and what do we do about a follow-up process or a sales process? Like, are there any questions or comments that you guys have just from being in here?
So I want to add something to what you said a while ago. This is a big issue. If we look at the chimney, the fireplace, the hearth industry, whatever we consider this to be, there is so much variety. You look at it. We have somebody new come to work for us. Are they going to learn wood? Are they going to learn pellets? Are they going to learn gas? And what happens often is we try to cram it in at one time. I often tell people in a seminar, I had a big advantage. The advantage I have is I was in this industry when gas started to be used. I was in this industry when direct vent came out. I can remember when there were no pellet stoves. There were no direct vents. I can remember when there were no gas logs sold in hard industries. Okay. So I was able to absorb this in little dribbles and drabs. And this came true to me in a seminar I was doing some years ago. I was teaching a seminar and it was in South Carolina. And I was talking about the NFPA standard change in 1984 about the direct connect with the wood stuff and positive connects. And there's a guy held his hand up and said, Jerry, I got a problem. What you're saying? And I said, really? What's your problem? He said, you're talking about stuff that happened before I was born. And that hit me. That was a magic moment for me because you look at all the things that we go through. When I look over here and I see him and him sitting here and all the things that we learned, then we bring somebody new in. And it's like, okay, learn all this. It's impossible.
Yeah.
This is why you got to have those systems that they can revert back to. And this is the whole thing. If your people are asking you a question, if you have to answer a question, if you are a crutch to your people, then you haven't developed your systems. And the system, this, one of the most pleasing things to be an employer is to say, when somebody asks you a question, to say, what's your SOP say?
Yeah.
What's your SOP say? Why are you bringing this to me? And there's some people that have fantastic SOPs.
Yeah.
When I look out there, Josh Kelly, he's built a wiki page that if you ever look at
man, I've seen that thing. It's crazy.
It is unreal. It's got everything. Why did he do that? Because he doesn't have the patience to answer the same question over and over again.
Yeah, they've got the mantra WWJD, right? What would Josh do?
What would Josh do? That's the name of the website. It's in-house proprietary. What would Josh do?
I think to close this out, and again, so thankful to you guys being here so early in the morning and to those of you that are watching this live. I think the biggest encouragement that I would leave is developing your sales process is going to be really, really important, whether it's 3 steps, 7 steps, 10 steps, but just a process of how is it that we sell. That consistency is going to help customers, but probably even beyond that is a follow-up system. So truly, most companies leave so much money on the table because they're not intentionally pursuing the opportunity. And this has been a big thing for us at Wi-Fi. We're trying to build this system out to let's give people a clear dashboard where you can look at your opportunities. Because what we found before we did this, at the company that I used to manage, before we started tracking our opportunities, we were losing jobs left and right. We had no idea. All of a sudden, we started putting them on a dashboard. And one of the things that we realized is that we lost jobs 4-1 to indecision over competition. Most people got confused out of buying a project because it just died out as opposed to losing to a competitor. And what we found is that I would have my salespeople dedicate about 2 to 3 hours a week where they were out of the office. Well, by out of the office, I mean they're off the showroom floor, right? There's no responsibility that they have. They're not picking up their phone. All they're doing is working their dashboard to move jobs through the pipeline. And we had a guy that was in inside sales, and he knew very, very little about fireplaces, but he was a great guy, loved talking to people on the phone. And we would spiff him like $40 every time he got a deposit over the phone. Well, by looking at our dashboard, he could look at a customer, and we tracked everything by pipeline stage. Again, stage 1, initial estimate. Stage 2, appointment scheduled. Stage 3, bid finalized. Stage 4, job won. So we can glance at this and see, okay, A-level customer at stage 3. He can look at the notes from the job. He's calling them to ask for the money. If he sees that they're a B-level customer at stage 1, he's calling them to win that in-home visit, moving them to stage 2. So what we did is this guy would follow up with, we'd track it. He'd follow up with about 130, 140 customers a month on top of working the showroom floor, which that's pretty awesome to follow up with that many. And we'd have some months, not every month, but we'd have some months where we'd pay him $700 a spiffs, $40 a spiff every single time we get a deposit over the phone. Pay someone $700. That's like a lot of jobs. I mean, that's 15, 20 jobs that we wouldn't have closed. And it's just making the phone call. He doesn't know anything about fireplaces, but he's kind. He knows how to move the customer from A to B. And if there's a question, he just goes, I'm not sure. Let me get the answer for you. And he hangs up, talks to the technical person, gets the answer, calls him back. So I think that process is something that is so important. And I'm sure that, Jerry, I know that you and Sheryl can help your clients with this. Something that we try to do too. I think that in a down economy, people will still pay for, high-end chimney serviceware. People will still buy fireplaces, but not as many. So you got to start playing offense. And I think that building out an intentional follow-up process where literally if you can have one person 2 to 3 hours a week, that will be the most effective money that you invest in your company. The payoff is just monstrous. Is there any final comments that you guys have?
You're dead on the money. Follow-up is where most people fail. If you look at it, how often should you follow up? A lot of times that's the question. And the answer is till they tell you to stop. Till they tell you don't call me anymore. If you're not taking it to that range, many people, and what's the number one follow-up hit? Do you know how many follow-ups is the magic one?
7.
Okay, 7 is what we should do, but you're going to close the majority on 4. 4 is going to be the key.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you and Matt also talked about something earlier. Do you realize that you just described the philosophies of the book Traction by Gino Wickman?
100%.
You followed it. So if you're listening to us today, the meetings, the tracking, the measuring, what Gino calls what you're talking about, he calls them rocks. And that's based on the Rockefeller principles. And Rockefeller was the richest man in the world at one time. So I don't think he was an idiot.
Yeah. Well, guys, we hope this has been helpful for you and that as this does tighten up, we don't need to panic, just like you said, like we can still operate our business and not live in fear, but we do need to realize that things are changing. When the tide goes out, you see it's been skinny dipping, and there's a lot of businesses that have been doing a lot of the wrong things and they've been getting by, but that is changing. And the hope is that, today it's given some value to you guys just to be encouraged and to know that there is a way to do it right. And I'm pumped for this Chimney Expo. And truly, I mean this, Jerry and Sheryl, there's no one in our industry that's doing what you guys are doing. I mean that sincerely. There is no one that is so invested in the growth and development of the people in our industry, and you're both incredible servants to it. And I'm honored to get to chat with you. So thanks for being here.
Hey, I appreciate it. You know, this fulfills a dream of mine today, Tim. I've always wanted to be a morning drive time disc jockey ever since I listened to Robin Williams. Okay.
Yeah.
And good morning, Vietnam. Okay. You remember that? So today you fulfilled a dream. We are drive time this morning on the East Coast, even though it's probably West Coast. I don't think nobody's driving unless they're getting home awful late right now.
Yep. It is about 4:40 in the morning my time. So we're gonna replay the stream a little bit later today to show everybody. But yeah, Dave and Kathy and everybody that's watching, thank you so much. It means a lot. And Sheryl, thanks for being here.
Oh, I've enjoyed it.